Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Voice by Matt show. My name is Matt Bertho, and I'm your host. And today we have Derek Vickers. And Derek, it sounds like he's in Clearwater, Florida today, correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yes.
So welcome to the show, Derek. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing fantastic, Matt, and I'm always doing good. I made a decision, I don't know, years ago that I was just going to wake up and feel good. That it's all a point of like perception,
Yep.
right? If you think that you're going to be doing bad, you are. And so I'm doing great. Appreciate you having me on, Matt. I'm excited.
Yeah, man. And so Derek and I were introduced through a mutual friend. And so, Derek, tell us a little bit about yourself, man, like your origin story, and then kind of what you do now. What's your business? What's your schooling? All of that. Family, anything you want.
For sure, for sure. So I'll start out. I grew up in a small town in Virginia. Probably maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people. I grew up in a very middle class family. My dad was a construction worker. My mom worked at banks and in offices, and she was like the office manager type, a very blue collar upbringing.
Yeah.
My family's, perception of working hard was going out and digging a ditch. And so when I like was doing sales, and I'll get into that a little bit. My grandma used to tell me all the time, and God rest her soul, was like, "You need to go get you a real job." I'm like, "Dude, this is a real job. It's a real freaking job." Right. But, as I just mentioned, what their definition was. And so a lot of my family still lives there. I still visit there a couple times a year. I love it. I love the small town feel because I can go shoot a gun off the back porch. I can't
There
do
you
that in
go.
Orlando, Florida.
No.
But, no, can't do that in Orlando, Florida. But grew up. I graduated high school. At the end of high school, started hanging out with the wrong people, partying too much, and going down that path. And I went to college and just started progressing that even more because as you'll see is I'm not a half. What's the cursing rule on this show?
Just go for it. It don't matter.
Okay, I'm not a half-ass kind of guy. Like I'm either in something or I'm out of something. And so I started going down the partying path and just hung out with the wrong people and started doing, not so good things.
Where'd you go to school,
Somehow
Derek?
it, what's that?
Where did you go to school?
I went to Coastal Carolina University. It's in
Okay.
right outside of Myrtle Beach.
Oh, nice.
Um, it's a great school. I didn't graduate because, again, of what I just mentioned to you,
Yeah.
and it didn't happen. And so I ended up leaving there in, I believe, 2008. I think it was 2008, 2009, and went back to Virginia. And I'm like, all right, I got to go back. I'm going to a community college. I was that guy who
Oh,
left.
man.
I was like, I'm never coming back. And, I came back and, I felt like a huge failure at that point because I came back and I never wanted to be those people because you see people in a small town, like they leave and they always end up coming back.
Yeah.
And I just said, I've never freaking want to be that guy. And I was at that point and was a failure. So I kept doing the same shit I was doing in college, partying every night, drinking, whatever else, anything I could get my hands on,
Man.
and got down in a pretty dark place. And but the interesting thing, Matt, the interesting thing when you talk about like finding your voice, I always
Yeah.
had this voice inside of me that was like, you're gonna be something.
Huh.
You're gonna get yourself out of this. And so although I did things in a very extreme manner, I always played on like the overboard line. I looked over the line. I stepped over the line. I even flew over the line, but I never really went completely over the line because I always had that inner voice that was like, you're going to be something, you're going to be successful, you're going to make something of yourself, like you're going to get out of this mess.
Yeah.
Um, and so I had an opportunity. I was working I went to school for accounting, by the way, just because I thought accountants made a lot of money. That was my thing. And so when I went back home, I started working at like, basic job in an accounting firm, realized I didn't want to do that. And then I had a friend that I went to college with. He was in the same mess I was in, but he offered me an opportunity. He's like, "Hey, I'm living in Florida. My dad has a condo. You can move down. You don't have to pay me rent for the first month or two until you get going."
Whoa.
And I was like, "Yeah, dude, I'm in," because I knew I needed to get out of Virginia. I knew he was probably not the ideal person to move in with. He was trying to get his stuff together too. Him and I still talk today, and he's cool now. But I was like, I got to just change my environment.
Yep.
I had to change my environment completely because
Mm.
I didn't know anyone else to hang out with in Virginia but the losers. And so ended up moving to Florida. I got a tax return for like 280 bucks. It's all the money I had. And I moved to Florida and got the bright idea to start selling insurance door to door.
Wow.
Commission only. Commission only. So like if you haven't, I would say if you know you want to make something of yourself or whatever and you want to do something, like do something that where you can learn a skill. I hated this job. I hated
Yeah.
it. I never believed in the product fully. I liked the product. Um, but it taught me how to be persistent. When people tell you no, like, so what? You got to keep going. It just really thickened my skin to like
Mm.
nothing can beat me up. Like nothing can destroy me because I remember one time, Matt, you'll probably get a kick out of this. I was selling insurance, driving around, calling on businesses door to door. And I had a Trailblazer, which was not the best on gas, and I didn't have any money, right? But I needed gas to drive around and, knock on doors. So I remember going to the gas station one time and I needed gas to go call on businesses. I had like a credit card from college with $1,000 limit that had $995 on it. So $5 in credit. I put a few bucks in gas on the credit card and I had like maybe 10 bucks or less in my on my debit card. So I put a couple bucks on that.
Man, I remember these days. Holy crap.
Mhm. Yeah, dude. And I had to go like muster up the confidence. So if you're a business owner, I had to come and have an educated conversation with you, like I've got my shit together. And like it was tough, but it taught me so many things that I learned in that business. And if you want to chime in and ask questions, you can, but then I'll get into how I got to real
No,
estate
I
investing.
love this. Just keep going. Just keep going.
Yeah, and so I struggled in that business for a while. My first year, I made $13,000. Don't know how I lived off that, but somehow miraculously I did. Second year, I think I made 18 or 20. Third year, I think I got in the 40 or 50 range. And the fourth year, I
Hey.
started doing better. So, but it was difficult. And like there were so many moments where I just wanted to quit. But the reason, Matt, I wanted to get into this business because the opportunity was there. I could go make a few hundred grand. Like I could. If I would have went and worked a 9 to 5, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Like,
Right.
no, but I could have done it in a commission sales position. And so
Hmm.
there was one day, I think it was actually soon after the gas story that I told you, because in that same point in time, I had to call my grandma
Oh boy.
and ask her for 50 bucks because I didn't have any freaking money, dude. And so after she gave me the money, I remember sitting in my car. I remember exactly where I was in Orlando. I was in front of Panera on Michigan and Orange. It's not there anymore, but I remember exactly where I was. It was in the afternoon. And I'm like, what the heck am I doing? I'm freaking, 24 years old. I'm still calling my grandmother in Virginia to send me 50 bucks, right?
Man.
Because when I was working, in this sales position, I was taking off on Fridays because I was a 1099. I thought I was cool. I could take off on Fridays. I would cut out at 2 o'clock. Like, I was just learning like what like working actually was. Because when you're in the 9 to 5, at least me in my experience, I was just sitting there. I wasn't
Yeah.
working,
You just walk
right?
around aimlessly and you're like, man, how can I not do anything and still get paid today?
Exactly. And like, hey, it's 123 right now. Let's see, I got 3 hours and 37 minutes left. Like, how can I make it look like
Did
I'm
I
doing
take
something
my
for?
did I take my third break yet today? Did I take my fourth
Yeah.
break?
It's like ticking down, ticking down. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Um, and so, yeah, I remember I called her. And this is the funny thing. So I got home that night and I'm like literally about to cry, dude. I'm like, I'm not even gonna lie. Like, it was tough. I was about to quit. I actually was never gonna quit, but this was like the closest point. And my wife, who she was my girlfriend at the time, she's now my wife.
Oh.
I called her and I was like, hey, I was complaining. I called her and I was looking for sympathy. I was trying to get as much sympathy as possible.
Oh.
You know what she told me? She goes, dude, you need to suck it up. These next words are her exact words. You're a effing loser. She goes, my friend that works at Lowe's makes more money than you do. And I'm like, yes. I was like, the interesting thing is I didn't even get mad at her for saying that because I knew it was true. I knew it
Damn.
was true. I knew it was true. And the only person I thought was going to give me like actual sympathy, like just literally reach through the phone and like, bang,
Punch. Boom.
just punch me in the face. And so after that, I realized that I needed to start, getting my stuff together. So I started reading more books. I started getting more serious about sales. I really started listening to audiobooks and actually, okay, I need to take sales and learn how to get good at it because there are people that are making more money than me. And so I just started doing that and
Hmm.
doing that. I was constantly listening to
Derek,
books. Yeah, go ahead.
what were some of the books that you listened to that you could tell us kind of helped you on that journey?
Yeah, so in the initial part, there was a some Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy stuff.
Oh yeah.
There was a Brian Tracy audio. It was called The Secrets of Selling. I
Oh,
literally listened to it all day long, like
yeah,
every
yeah.
day, all day. And there's a Zig Ziglar one too, his like See You at the Top audiobook. I'm
Okay.
sure you probably know what that is, but I could probably still recite it back to you if you just turned it on and I could pick up where the part it was because I
Mm.
listened to it, so many times. And that stuff helped, but then I stumbled upon some of Grant Cardone's sales stuff and
Okay.
his book, The 10X Rule, that like really, I'm like, oh, wow, this is why you suck because you're not thinking big enough. You're taking the actions to
Oh,
make 30 grand a year instead
here
of
we
taking the
go.
actions to make 400 grand a year.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like, this is what taught me to work. That book taught me to work because I was
Huh.
making like 5 to 10 calls a day, right? Maybe 15. And then after that, he's like, dude, you got to do 10x the action. I'm like, okay, this is going to suck.
Holy
But,
crap.
and so I started
Yeah,
calling
I
on
haven't
more.
read that book, so now I want to read that book.
It's a great book. Great book. Very practical things that you can do. And so I started calling on 30 and 40 businesses a day. And then I started using the phone where I was making hundreds of calls a day.
Holy crap, Derek.
And then my business started to take off. And I think it was the fourth or fifth year, I was like top three in the state for sales for this particular
Really?
insurance company. Yes. And it really just was like a flip in the mindset that like you're not thinking big enough. Because I thought $50,000 was a lot of money. And I mean it is. And I know people
Well,
that
yeah. I mean, from a small town in Virginia, I'm from a small town in Kansas. fifty
same
thousand
thing.
dollars, we're making it. Like that's amazing, right? But now it's
Right.
like that's just like a month, that's a slow month now, kind of, right?
For sure. For sure. And this is where like my real estate journey started. So like I knew I wanted to be wealthy, to
Oh
have an
wow.
impact and help people. Like I always knew that. And when I was listening to Grant's stuff, he just kind of reiterated, like, dude, you're not wrong, you're not weird, like you should want that. I'm like, okay, that's great, right? I just reaffirmed that. And so he had this real estate show that he used to do every Monday, a show on. And before this, I thought if I looked up someone on Google, hey, net worth of, I don't know, Leonardo DiCaprio, just what came to mind, right? Or Michael Jordan,
There you go.
Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
Um, and it said $100 million, right? Or 200 million, whatever. I thought that these people got paid a W-2 that said $200 million in a year. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
we're not taught that growing up at all.
No, no. Um, and so I realized on that real estate show, I realized that the super wealthy people own assets. And I'm like, oh shit. And Grant was doing all this real estate underwriting and stuff. And I'm like, this makes a lot of sense, right? So I'm going to make a ton of money in the insurance business and then I'm going to throw it into real estate and let it grow. And that's how I'm going to create wealth.
Wow.
And so I decided that it was like 2015, 2016, and I started looking for apartment deals and just looking and underwriting. There was no way I didn't have like raising, $10,000 was unreal to me. Like it was unreal to me at that point. And I was looking at deals that were 15, 20 million, whatever, bigger multifamily deals. And so I was like, man, it was kind of deflating because I didn't want to buy like one unit or anything. And I was still hustling in the insurance business trying to make that work. And so I was like, look, I'm still going to study real estate. I'm going to learn everything I know about it. And I'm going to keep hustling this insurance business and saving money because I'm just not there yet.
Right.
Even though knowing what I know now, I could go back and just start doing it then. But I so I kept hustling in the insurance business and I ended up building a team. I had a team of 8 people. It started out. And then by the end of the insurance business, I had a team of 100 people under me.
Wow.
I was like the regional manager for this particular area. But then I realized that I'm like, holy crap. So I didn't own my book of business. And I was basically making a bunch of money and spending a bunch of my own money to build the business. And I didn't have any equity in the business.
Oh boy.
And so I started to get a little like, disaffected by this. I'm like, what the heck? I'm putting in all these hours building in this freaking business. I can't go sell it. Like, and they can come in and wipe me out anytime that I want.
Oh.
Yeah. And like too, Matt, like, so this, I like to call it a quasi entrepreneur at this point because I had all the expenses. I hired the staff in my office. I paid them from my 1099,
Wow.
but I didn't have equity in the business. And so that started to get pretty deflating. And our team was ultra successful. Like we did super well. I won tons of awards. We were crushing it. Like to not even be like whatever about it. We were doing really well. And then I would have people from corporate who had never knocked on the door, who had never picked up the phone and called somebody. They
Wow.
were trying to tell me that I needed to change my business. And I'm like,
Oh boy.
screw you, dude. Like you've never been out here and knocked on the door, right? Um, and so then when COVID happened,
Oh yeah.
our revenue went down because no one was buying insurance. Florida was open, it was, but there was so much uncertainty. No one wanted insurance that they didn't necessarily have to have. And so I was like, dude, I got to get this real estate thing going now. And so I started looking around at like deals again. And then my buddy, he was actually buying mobile home parks in the Carolinas. And I talked to him and I was like, hey, man, I want to invest with you. And he basically told me, I think I had like maybe 50 grand at the time or 100 grand, something there. I think it was 50. I told him I could give him 50. And he basically said, dude, you don't have enough money to give me.
Oh.
And I was like, he punched me in the face. And I said, all right, dude, I'm going to go do this myself. Screw you. Right. I'm going to go do this myself. And so I found a list of all the mobile home parks in Florida. And again, back to the insurance business, as many bad things that it was about it, I wasn't scared to call a property owner. I picked up the phone immediately. Granted, I didn't really know what to say because it was a new business, but I wasn't scared to pick up the phone,
Right.
which was key. A lot of people are scared to do that. So started calling. And it was Matt, this was a game changer for me. So have you ever been in sales?
Oh yeah. I sold
Yeah,
computers at CompUSA. I mean, basically when I talk to people about what I do as a voice coach, I'm selling myself and my services. So yeah, I sell
for
every
sure.
day. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We all do. And the difference in this when I was calling the property owners was that um I was calling them to get them to sell me something. Like I was trying to give them money instead of the reverse. I'm like, oh, I'm like, this is easy, dude. I'll freaking let's just call, you know? And so I started getting some traction. I started to find some deals. And my buddy that basically said, you don't have enough money to invest with me, he introduced me to a friend that lived right down the street from me. And he was a real estate guy. He had invested in mobile home parks. And I met with him and I told him I wanted to create this big, this massive real estate company. He's like, hold on a second. Like, what do you, he's like, do you want to, like, are you trying to invest in other stuff or mobile home parks? And I said, no, I am investing in mobile home parks. This is the business that I want to do. And he's like, oh, okay. And I had this deal. And I was like, it's a pretty good deal. And I was like, hey, you want to go in on this deal? And he's like, well, like, blah, blah, blah. He basically said no. And that was fine. And so, anyways, I kept talking with him because I kept finding deals and he was sort of a mentor to me. And we're still, partners and friends today, actually. But this is getting to how we actually became partners. And so he was like, I'd send him deals and I'm like, hey, this is my thoughts on it. Here's my underwriting. If your audience doesn't know what underwriting is, you're basically trying to tell if the deal is good or not with the numbers and the
Right.
finances and things. And he would say, hey, you're looking at this wrong or whatever. And so one day out of the blue, and I'm telling you, this is like once you commit to something, once you actually commit, you can say you committed to something, but once you commit to something actually in your mind and you start moving towards that, you just
Mm.
pull in the stuff that you need. But you
Mm.
really have to get, obsessed with it, or you have to be convinced of it. You will pull in the stuff that you need and the things that you want. You will. There's just something that happens to the magnetism of like the individual,
Ah, it's
the
true.
being when this happens,
The
right?
action, that first action step, you picking up the phone and calling these mobile home parks and being like, "Hey, do you have any properties for sale?" Right? And then
Yeah,
you're like, you took that step because that creates momentum. Even
for
doing this
sure.
podcast, creating momentum right now.
Right.
This is creating
Right.
momentum, right? And so, yeah, go on, but that the first action step to do the thing, to go all in and be like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Let's go. Like when I
Yeah.
started this podcast in 2019, I didn't know how to start a podcast. I knew how to use my voice. That's what I teach people, right?
Right.
I knew what great equipment was. I knew what to buy. I knew how to edit. I knew how to do all that. But all I had to do is say, okay, I'm going to start the podcast. How do I start a podcast? Well, you got to get Anchor, you got to get Podbean, and blah, blah. But the point was, when I said that, I'm going to do this,
Yep.
that's when you're like, okay, what's the first action step? God, universe, whatever. And so for you, it was picking up the phone. For me, it was just saying, how do you start a podcast? That's it.
Right.
Anyway, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I couldn't agree with that more. And it's like that once you combine that massive commitment, I'm going to do this with the action. That is the thing. You can't just make a commitment and say, I'm
Yeah.
going to do this and twiddle your thumbs and stuff's going to come. It doesn't work like that. You have to mesh those two together and you will pull in stuff. And so I was sending him deals and I was hustling around finding deals. Mind you, I'm still running my insurance business,
Wow.
right? My wife's pregnant at
Oh
this
boy.
time too. Um, and my business partner now, he calls me one day. I knew he was looking at this deal. It was a mess of a deal. But he called me and is like, hey, man, the guy, my operating partner, backed out of the deal. We're closing in 7 or 10 days. Do you want in? I said, I'll call you back. And as soon as I got off the phone with him, I literally hear Grant Cardone in my ear, like, don't be a little, you know what, you're gonna do that. Like I hear him like, call him freaking back. And so I call him back and I was like, yeah, dude, I want in, of course. Like, and so I came in as a partner on that deal. I didn't have to put any money in the deal. I was just going to go and do the dirty work, knock on the door, show up at the property every day, sell houses, chase crazy people out of the park. And I was going to get 20% of the entire deal for doing that. So we bought that deal
Nice.
for, yeah, so we bought that deal for 425,000 in September of 2020. It reappraised in it was like August, July, August of 21 for 1.75 million because of what we
Bro.
went in there and did. And my point part of that was like 300K, 350K or something. And so we refinanced that and I got that. And I'm like, dude, this is more than like now, mind you, like when we bought that property, we actually started buying more in 2021, but this was the first successful kind of exit that went cycle.
Yeah.
Um, because I was still working the insurance business at that time. And then it was like, dude, that refi gave me just as much money as I was making in the insurance business.
A
And the insurance business
year.
is hard work. Like it was a
Yeah.
grind.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So that's what you do now. Are you all in on real estate now?
Yes. Yes. Actually, so not the first property, but I found four other properties that we closed in February of 2021 that I forget where I was going with this, but we closed those properties. I had some stock that the previous company gave me, sold that, every bit of it. I had I just gotten a bonus and I had like 100 grand in an account. I literally took the account to zero. There was no, I was like, these deals were home runs. They were guarantees. I had no apprehension to doing that. It was just, oh, it was a sure thing. Hey, wire me the money. Boom, I'll take my savings account to zero. It didn't matter because I knew these deals were going to be good. And they
Wow,
turned out to
Derek.
be even better.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy.
So
I
going through, everything that you've been through, I was a public school teacher. Now I do this full time, right? Um, it's kind of awesome to hear your story because along the way you were building skill sets in in little pieces of your life, right? In little timeline periods of your life, whether it was sales, knocking on doors, partying, screwing up, failing, going back home, being able to shoot the gun off the back porch, all of that, moving in with your friend in Florida, all of that stuff, right? But I think the hardest part, Derek, because I've been through similar stuff, is when you're in the moment of, I only have $50 that I borrowed from my freaking grandma right now. How in the world am I going to get to the point that you're at right now, right? How in the world in this moment am I going to make it to that dream, that vision? And so I love your story because it 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 really amplifies wherever you're at right now is just part of the dream, part of the journey. It's like a like in Lord of the Rings, it's just like this moment that you're going to learn a lesson, good or bad, right? But that moment, that lesson is going to mean a lot in the future. And it could be 10 years from now that you
yeah.
look back on it and be like, man, my grandma gave me that $50. And I'm never going to forget that moment.
No.
And in
No.
that
No.
moment, it was probably so like just a day, right?
Yeah. It was a rough day. It was a turning point day, but you're right because those points in time are like when people quit and hang it up and they're like, whatever, I'm going to quit my sales job. My dreams are no good. I'm going to go work a 9 to 5 somewhere. And that's okay for some people. It's fine. But if you have big goals and there's things you want to do, like you're going to get to them is my point. Just don't give up,
Yeah.
right? Like you can't give up. And
So
that,
why
as you said,
why didn't you
sorry,
give
go ahead,
up?
man. I knew I had that little voice in me that I told
Okay,
you
well
I had when
let's
I was
talk about the voice because I know what the voice is. But I want to
yeah.
hear what you are determining that voice to be? Because everybody has their own, idea of what that voice is. You're the second podcast that I've recorded today, and it's really cool, this theme that's happening, because I love it, right? But Allison also talked about presence, spirit, voice, whatever it is,
Mm.
right? But I want
Yeah.
to hear what your interpretation of that is. And then how do you discern that is the voice that's telling me to do this thing right now? And then you take action. How do you discern what that voice is? And what is that voice, Derek?
So to me, that voice is like me, actually me, without any, preconceptions or any false data or false information from the news, from TV, from family, from friends. It's me without the false information. It's me without putting in the considerations, right? It's
So
me
like a
without
like a
baggage.
stripped out version of like Derek, but not being tainted by the environment at all.
Correct. This is actually me, 100%.
So
And
that
that,
I
sorry,
mean,
it was like it's like an inner knowingness of knowing what's right and what is not right. I just always knew that I was like, hey, I can do something, I can be something. I want to be the person that kind of breaks the cycle in my family.
yeah.
And that voice was just that. It was just actually me without all the other stuff. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, you're not, you're too young, you don't have a college degree, like all that stuff. Like that was the actual me.
So how did that come to you? How did you hear that? How did you feel that?
Yeah, and so that's a great question because it was just it was always there. It was
Hmm.
always there when I was a
You
little
just ignored
kid,
it.
for the most part. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point, Matt, because people do ignore this
All the
voice
time. All the time.
all the time. Yeah,
So what
and
do you okay, so this is really cool. So the hard shit that happens to us, do you think that that is like almost a wake up call that says, are you going to listen to this voice? Are you going to listen to your intuition? Are you going to actually listen to it and do something about it?
yes, 100%. And my personal view on this is that I think it's actually the real you causing these situations in order to do that. And
I
so
felt
you
that.
like I took the actions to get me to a place where I had to ask for the $50, but I took those freaking actions. And so it's like, hey dude, you're not going to listen to me, the real me. So you are going to take these actions that put you in a situation to put you in an instance where you have to listen to me at that point. Or you have to learn this freaking lesson at some point.
Man, we could go all day about that, about instances that we know of people that have had things happen for them that wake up calls.
For sure. And at the end of the day, so those instances were typically caused by something. And look who it is. Usually it's usually you,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
That cause those things in one way, shape, or form. And so that's just my thought process
No, I love
on it.
that. That's good. And so, Derek, what are you doing right now? What's the mission right now? What do you got coming up for the future? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, and so the goal now is to acquire more mobile home parks and keep expanding that business, but also have a coaching business where I teach people how to buy mobile home parks and become financially free
There
with
you
mobile home
go.
parks.
Yep.
And I've always enjoyed doing that. So when I was a regional manager in the insurance business, I basically would mentor people to come in and show them how to make their first 100 grand. And so now it's like shifted a little bit to financial freedom where they can come in, buy a park, and get passive income from that and make it passive at some point. So I'm doing that. Obviously, buying more parks. We have an acquisitions business that we've kind of morphed now where we get parks and find them for other people. And then, I just want to continue to help people. There's organizations that I feel really passionate about, different charity organizations and things. And that's really the deeper purpose, to make a meaningful impact on the planet and people,
Mm.
because there's so much bad data. There's so much terrible information out there. There's so much negativity
I think
that I
a
go
question
ahead.
I have is why mobile home parks?
So, a couple different reasons, because the fundamentals of the asset were great. And obviously, from an affordable housing perspective, like there's no affordable housing in America. Like it's just not, right?
Right,
Let's just
right.
call it what it is. There's really not. And this is like one of the last legs of affordable housing that we can preserve, because a lot of these parks they're mismanaged, they're run down, they're
Yeah,
going to be demolished if
yeah, that,
someone like us doesn't go in and fix them back up. And there goes, 50, 100 units, 200 units in a big city, where people could have paid a cheap amount to live. So that's one of the reasons why I like it. And then also, for that same reason, the supply and demand factor. The demand for these is high. The supply of them is being decreased on a yearly basis because
mm.
of they're in bad shape. The cities want apartments there. They don't want the local trailer park there. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah, so
love
those are
that.
those are the basic reasons.
Okay, anything you want to say before I ask you some questions?
Go ahead, I'm good.
All right. So I always ask these questions. We have like 9 minutes because I have another podcast record right after this too.
All
But
good.
Derek, what makes you tick? What gives you joy?
Honestly, I get this question quite a bit. They're like, "What do you do for fun?" Like, I love learning. I love, like, when I was negotiating a deal just a little bit ago, and I'm like, "This is what gets me going." Right? This gets me going. I love that. I love setting a good example for my kids.
Yeah, man.
Right? I like, showing my kids I'm going to the gym every.
Yep.
Like I love doing that, and I love hanging out with my kids, but like setting a good example for them, like, oh, hey, Papa, like he's
Mm,
got his stuff together.
that's
So
good.
that, and then, helping and contributing to things that I don't see a direct benefit from, like a charity organization or something. Like
Wow.
I like doing that because that shows that, like, hey, I believe in this organization, I believe what they're doing, but it also shows that like you, Derek, like it's a completely selfless act, is I guess is what I'm getting to.
Yeah, man.
There's
I
no
like.
accolades. Like I don't talk about how much I do.
Yeah.
I don't need to be known for that. But that, because just for the fact that, like, hey, it's a completely selfless act. Hey, you just did a big thing over here. I know people that have way more money than I do that don't do any of that stuff.
That's awesome, man.
And I just get a lot of joy out of that.
Okay. Um, what is your purpose? What are your purposes? Some of your purposes.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that I just mentioned, as far as, like, helping the planet. I want to make the planet a better place. I want to teach, financial literacy
There you go.
to like these, underprivileged countries. Like I want people to be like, man, Derek, he actually taught me how to think about money, and since that, I was able to get out of poverty and do something great for my family. And I just think that is super cool, because the only reason that I stayed wherever I was for so long is because of lack of information. These third world countries,
Oh,
they
yeah.
just lack of information, right? And if you have, well, lack of the right information is is definitely something there. But that's my purpose. I want to keep creating like a great family. My wife, she's freaking amazing, and we have two kids now, and I want more kids.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, what do you love?
What do I love? Well, my family, but this is what I like, what really, like, just is boom. I just like accomplishment. I like being productive.
You
I
like to
like
win. You like
I
to
like to
win. You love
win.
to win.
love to win and be productive and get things done, like checking something off my list here today.
Yep.
Like I used to be a deadbeat. I'd sit on the freaking couch and watch stuff all day or whatever. Like, and my mom used to be like, "Hey, Derek, what have you done today?" And I used to get so mad because she asked me because I hadn't done shit that day, right?
Oh man.
And so now I'm like, I just like being productive.
Yeah. Okay. And then this is a hard question. And so why is Derek on Earth?
Yeah, I think I have been put here to set a good example for the rest of society that came from, middle class. I wasn't living under a bridge. I'm not gonna lie. We had food on the table every night. But I want to show people that like, hey, there's a way out of this. You don't have to be stuck. Like you
Mm.
can take actions and go. You don't need an Ivy League degree. You
Mm.
don't need to be, have a 200 IQ or whatever. You
Yes.
can do that being a normal person with a Southern accent, probably still don't say words correctly or use the right grammar, but it's okay. Like you don't have to be that, this big private equity guy to do that. So I want to set an example for that. Like,
Mm.
hey, I want people to look at my life and be like, man, he's got it, going on. He's got it dialed in. And I think that is one of the things that we can do is just if you want a better society, first you have to set a good example.
Yeah.
Like, like for
Well, you're
sure.
doing it. You're doing it now. You're totally doing it.
Working on it. Still
Yeah.
got a ways to go, but thank you.
Yeah. So, Derek, any parting words or any kind of advice that you'd like to give the listeners on the podcast today? It's been awesome to have you on here, man. And then let them know how to kind of get a hold of you too.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, so I would say like if you're at one of those points that I talked about in the beginning of the interview, like those tough points in your life, like, just remember that like, hey, this is the point when most people quit.
Mm,
This is the point when most people throw in the towel. This is the point when most people say, hey, I'm done.
yeah.
But that's the indication that you need to keep going. With that and the fear aspect, if you're moving into new actions, new levels, you're going to experience fear. If you're going to do something new, there's going to be fear, but that's actually not something to make you run. That's an indication of like, hey, this is actually, I'm going the right direction here. I
Wow.
should feel fear here.
Yeah.
And so, like, those tools have helped me tremendously. Like, I still do this. Like, this morning when I was working out, I wanted to stop when I was sprinting. Like, it was tough. But I'm like, no, dude, if this run here was like the difference between you hitting your goals or not, I'm like, all right, I'll keep running. He's okay. Like, let's just go. Right. So that's what I would say to people. Just keep going. Like you'll never fail unless you quit. I know you've heard that, but it's so true. Just keep taking that action and you will win. How you can find me, I'm Derek Vickers 885 on every social media platform, Instagram, I mean all of them, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, every single one. I have a podcast that we do weekly. It's called the MHP Show, the Mobile Home Park Show. So it's either
Hey.
me or I have a guest. We're talking about everything mobile home parks. So if you want to learn about that, you can check that out. And then also, I have a free webinar that I did. It's about an hour. Teaches you all the way from the basics to how to close and buy and underwrite a mobile home park. So that's derekvickers.com/masterclass webinar. I'm not
Man,
hard to find.
dude, Derek, thank you so much, man. And thank you for sharing your voice, dude, and continuing to share your voice and helping people, have a place to live, dude. That's huge.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you having me on, Matt. I've been on a lot of podcasts, but this one I loved like really getting into the story and
Mhm.
really, I felt like I shared some good stuff there for your people, and I hope I did. So I
Yeah, you
appreciate
did,
it.
man. Well, thank you for being on the podcast today, and we will see you guys on the next podcast of Voiced by Matt. Have a good day, everybody.